Welcome to Behind the Build. I am your host, Jonathan Jacobs, and today I have with me someone who we collectively agree, we kind of feel like we've known each other for a long time. We were introduced to each other through a common friend, acquaintance, friend, good person. We met about a year ago, and we have spent the last year trying to figure out a time to be able to sit down and have this conversation. I have been very excited about it. When we first met, we hit it off, and subsequently we have exchanged emails and phone calls and all the rest of it. This is a very long-winded introduction, but today I have with me Cindy Rendely of Cindy Rendely Architecture. I'm going to tell you about some of our curated podcast partners. Two companies, starting with Kaplan's Appliances, a company that's an establishment in Toronto. Currently in their third generation as a family-owned and operated business. I was thinking about about my own renovation, and when I was going through the planning phases of the reno, we were talking through what types of appliances we were going to want. So I brought my wife Wendy out with me, and we go and we meet with our rep at the showroom. And the showroom is not like your traditional, just large-scale industrial space. It's a curated special space. Why? Because they've got individual zones for different manufacturers, so you can walk in and understand the different products from the different suppliers. It's a space that really, it speaks to the industry. So before you even have a client, they work with you in understanding what you're looking for. What type of experience do you want your clientele to have? Because everyone's got their own individual requirements. So when you walk in, you feel that. You feel like this is a space curated for your clientele, and it's specific to you as a designer, an architect, even as a builder. So with that in mind, I bring my wife there, we walk through, we do this amazing walkthrough, and then we get this demo where they have two chefs in-house, and they prepare an amazing meal. And you get an understanding of what it's like, not only just to have a meal prepared on what you're eventually going to buy, but to really make you feel special. And then when you think about this, you get your appliances, they're installed and everything's great, and you finish your new build or you finish your renovation, and then a couple years later, let's say you need something. And it happens, right? Like sometimes there's an issue with an appliance. I don't go out there and call a 1-800 number. You call their service department and they work with you hand in hand at getting that resolved. And I've experienced this. We manage homes for some clients. We've got a client that's talking about an issue they have, and I go and I call their service department, and it's looked after. I don't, at this point, have to look after anything else. And that's what you want from a partner. If you're interested in learning more, please feel free to reach out to me. It's Jonathan, Jonathan, at waldenhomes.ca, and I will connect you with one of their specialists who will understand what you're looking for in the connectivity for your clientele and what you want them to experience from a rep. And they'll connect you with the right person. Kaplan's, they're special, and that's why we wanted them to be a partner on this podcast. Next, I want to tell you about The Doors. The Doors is our window and door supplier on a number of our projects, and when it came time to want to partner with someone for the podcast, I reached directly out to Martin and said, I'd like you to be a part of this. And the reason for that, again, in many ways similar to what I talk about with Kaplan's, is that there's a service and an ownership that they take on. When you're dealing with companies where the owners are focused on what that experience is like for the client, it matters. It makes our job as a builder for our clients a lot easier. We don't have to hold the hand quite as much because the service is so focused on that. Martin and Marta own the business. They're involved in everything from the quoting of the project initially through to installation and service. You're not being handed off at any point. And what's really amazing with them is that their product is available in multiple types, from PVC and fiberglass and vinyl to aluminum, to wood clad, to solid wood. They even do beautiful roof to wall or knee walls, and we've installed that. They do incredible curtain walls and really customized and specialized doors, exterior doors. If you're interested in learning more about this, I'm happy to introduce you to them. And also, if you're speccing for Passive House, they have Passive House windows and doors. Happy to connect you with Martin. My email address is jonathan at waldenhomes.ca. That's Jonathan at waldenhomes.ca. Now, let's go back to the podcast. Cindy, thanks for joining.
Hello. It's lovely to be here a year later. I can't believe that you were as patient with me as you were. And I hope I don't disappoint.
I don't think you will.
I do have some stories to tell, I guess. We all do.
Yeah. And I mean, the whole beauty of what this has become and what we intended for it to become when we started, when Bruce and I were talking about this, years ago, was that we just wanted to have like this initiative where we can go and have people tell stories about their own lives. And there was no preconception or misconception of who they were based on the words that were written in an article or anything like that. This was like an honest storytelling legacy opportunity for people to be able to talk about who they are and what they are. So
I love that. A worthy pursuit.
Right?
I'm happy to be a part of it. And thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. So I start with everyone in asking you, and I think that you're going to have the answer to this. It's a big pursuit to embark upon a career in architecture. And so I was curious, and I always am curious, what sparked this innate interest in wanting to be working with design in your hands early in your life? Was there some, like you built your first treehouse or your first pillow fort in your basement? Like what led you into this form of stream of creativity?
Do we have 3 hours?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. So this is going to be a part 4 series. Everyone buckle up.
Yeah. Well, for me, it was not a linear path.
Okay.
I think out of the womb, I was a creative soul.
Yeah.
And my parents always encouraged that, supported that. But it was always after the serious work was done, like the math and the physics and the chemistry. And my parents were not educated people.
Okay.
So it was very important for them that their children were educated. So as much as they encouraged the arts, I mean, I played piano, I played flute.
Do you still?
No, I haven't
Okay.
touched either in many years.
Okay.
I took ballet from 8 to 18, all the sort of classical things. We always drove everywhere to museums and galleries and exhibitions. I was very supported. The arts were made very readily available to me.
Right.
But it was not something I ever considered as a profession. I grew up thinking, you were a doctor, dentist, or a lawyer. And I was a good student and I did well in sciences and math and whatever. And my brother was a dentist and I was in love with my orthodontist when I was 11. And I thought, okay.
You can look at my teeth anytime.
I'm going to be an orthodontist. But anyway, but really, as supportive as my parents were, I probably should have gone to OCAD. Or at the time, it was OCA. It was a college.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a university at the time. And I think for my parents and that generation, it was very much like, oh, poor kid, didn't have enough brains to go to university. They had to send her to art college. But we'd never even heard of, I grew up in a very small town. My parents are from London, England, and New York City, 2 of my favorite cities on the planet, the great metropolises of the world. And I ended up in a very small town called Brantford, Ontario, the home of Wayne Gretzky.
Yep.
And so there was just no question. I was a good kid. I did as I was told. I was only supposed to do 1 or 2 things well, be a good kid and be a good piano player and be a good student. So the education was always encouraged and supported, as well as the arts, but after the serious work was done, as I said. So I never really had understood how you could apply that creativity to a professional. I could never combine the professional pursuit with the creative pursuit. But there was this time, and it's just such a fabulous story that still makes me laugh when I tell it. I went out with this boy in high school who I thought I was madly in love with, whose father happened to be an architect and the dean of one of the architecture schools. I'll just say in Southern Ontario, because I don't want to say who or what, because it shall remain nameless. And I used to love hanging out at his parents' house. And it turns out, and I remember being impressed by 2 things. When I had dinner there, all of the art was hung so that it was to be enjoyed in the sitting position. So they were hung lower on the wall. So the center line kind of met your eye level in the sitting position instead of standing up. I thought I had never seen that before. And the other thing that I remember seeing is they'd renovated their bathroom, their ensuite master washroom, their ensuite private washroom. And it was all white with a red enameled faucet. I remember KWC. I can see it right now to this day. And I'd never seen a red enameled faucet before. And this is in Brantford, Ontario. And his dad drove an Alfa Romeo and he wore leather pants. And I realized that I was really in love with the father. There wasn't the son at all. And he had an impression on me and was the first person that I'd really met that kind of dawned on me like, oh, architecture, creativity, professional. That sort of was a subconscious seed that I went back to many years later. But it didn't dawn on me at the time that maybe that was something to pursue. I hadn't thought about beyond the doctor, dentist, lawyer thing. And I had to share that. Anyway, I love that story.
Can I ask you a question as you talk about your parents from London and New York? How did your parents meet? Oh,
that's a whole other episode, but I can make it a very quick, encapsulated story. My dad's from New York City, was in the Air Force stationed in London, England. His buddy on the base was getting married to an American guy, getting married to a British girl. My mom happened to be best friends with the bride. There was an engagement party. My parents met. They got married. She went with Marvin, who drove a Rolls Royce. That was her date. But then she pretended she forgot her umbrella. I had to go back to the house so she could see my dad. He walked her home, said, will you be my girl? She said, we don't say that here. That's such an American thing. Anyway, they got married. My mother was a child bride really at 18. And they moved to New York and my mom was very homesick, hated it actually. In the meanwhile, my grandparents, for various reasons, moved to Canada and they followed to Brantford, Ontario. My dad said, if only I knew an hour down the road, there was a place called Toronto. Anyway, my parents live in Toronto for 28 years now.
Okay.
But anyway, so I did the good girl thing and I went to University of Toronto and I did a science degree in physiology and zoology. Did my dental aptitude test, was going to apply to dental school. I graduated University of Toronto in May, got married in June, moved to New York City in August for my husband at the time's business.
Yeah.
And that opened up a whole world to me of the arts. I mean, New York City was my oyster.
Yeah.
I wasn't working, so I was able to enjoy the city for a year and a half.
I understand so much more about your love for New York now.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah.
We'll get there.
But as a child, I mean, there were two things that were always very telling of, kind of what I would become, I guess. Apparently it was very traumatic to dress me for school when I was young. And, the red leotards had to match the red dress. And it'd be like, they don't match. It's a different color. So the mornings were traumatic. So my dad had a thing. Okay, let's set her clothes out the night before she goes to bed. And so that was the new rule. And the other thing I remember, I don't like conflict or yelling and I have a very animated family who they speak loudly and everyone has an opinion. So I had this walk-in closet, which I thought was like my bachelor apartment. It was probably 3 feet wide by 3.5 feet or 4 feet long. But it was like my little world and it had a window. So I remember going in there when I needed my quiet time and I had everything, all my stuff was in there and everything was lined up, color coded from small to large, very organized. And, so there was and fashion was a very big deal, a very great way for me to express myself. I was kind of known for the kid with the, very interested in fashion and clothing and throughout my life. So those were vehicles to express myself. Anyway, went to New York, lived there for a year and a half, had the luxury of time on my hands, bought a pin that was made of junk, rubber, glass, found objects, wood, scrap metal. It cost a fortune. And it was a very interesting little kind of coming together of materials. I was always a maker. The other thing I was going to say, applying to dental school, wanted to be a dentist, and then becoming a jeweler. Well, I'm skipping a beat a bit, but
that's okay.
I bought this pin. I thought I can do better. There's an area in New York where you can find all these bits and baubles, and I became a self-proclaimed jewelry designer. So when we moved back to Toronto, I was doing that, selling to the Art Gallery of Ontario and some fashion stores, Creed's at the time, which was kind of the Holtz of the day. And I felt like a fraud. I felt like, I'm a self-proclaimed jewelry designer. If I'm really going to take this seriously, I have to go back to school. So I went back to school to George Brown, did a 3-year program, it's a college degree, and became a goldsmith jeweler metal artist. And I'm
smiling right now as you're telling me this.
Because?
I mean, we'll get there, but
Okay.
because. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
so
Sorry.
I was a kind of a one-man band. I had a studio at home. I was direct contact to the client. I did one-off custom pieces for a private clientele base, plus the retail world selling, silver jewelry to AGO. And I did get an order at the ROM, but never fulfilled it because certain things happened directing me towards architecture.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I had a studio in my home at the time. And I was running and building quite a lovely business and building a name for myself. And then life changed. And through a time of separation and divorce, I felt very vulnerable being a freelance artist. And I always knew, and I was also frustrated with the small scale. So I always knew that I wanted more. And I knew that architecture was the umbrella of all the arts. And always having that drive behind me about being educated, being the real deal, being authentic, being licensed, being, having that sort of certificate to walk through the door kind of thing.
We are starting a newsletter. It's called Inside the Challenge. We want you to be a part of it, either as a consumer of the information or to record the information. The concept is simple. We're going to book a 10 to 20 minute time on Zoom, and you're going to record with me and share your challenge. If you don't want to record, well, how about you consume it? You can email me to either record with me or email me to register and sign up to receive the newsletter. People are going to be talking about the challenges of operations, of sales, of constructability, how personal elements are affecting their professional life. I've already recorded a whole bunch of them from people in the industry, the owners of architecture practices and design practices and consulting practices. We really look forward to getting this out to you. Feel free to connect Jonathan, Jonathan, at waldenhomes.ca. We look forward to getting this to you. You just said something that was like so perfect to describe the craft of architecture.
Which part?
It's the umbrella of the arts.
Right.
I'd never heard that before.
Yeah.
I love
Well, it is. I mean, Renaissance, the Renaissance man or Renaissance architecture. I mean, Brunelleschi, he did the Duomo in Florence, but he was an architect, an urban planner, a sculptor, a metal artist, a goldsmith. Yeah. So in school, actually, so I'm skipping ahead a bit, but I decided to apply to architecture school.
Yeah. Feeling
vulnerable at the time, wanting more. Scale wise, I guess education wise, I was always sort of aiming higher. And I only spoke to my brother about it, I think. And he was like, cool idea, like go for it. If you don't apply, you don't have an option to go, get in and then figure out if you're going to do it. Anyway, so I put a portfolio together, which was all of my mostly jewelry, but I got frustrated with that scale. I was a little bigger, did salad servers and serving pieces, salt and pepper shakers. Actually, I think of it now, Bruce Kuwabara was a bit of a mentor of mine early before I became an architect because he did a menswear store called Nicholas on Bel Air. And I was in Toronto, and I was friends with the owner, or I knew the owner. And in the ceiling, and he hired me to do some men's jewelry, actually. And he said, well, and there was a ceiling piece that was inlaid mahogany or wood, I don't know, a ceiling element, and it was wrapped with stainless steel, and it was oval shaped. And I actually did a pair of men's cufflinks based off of that ceiling element that Bruce had done. And then when I did end up going to architecture school and I met him, I told him that story. And he was always very, supportive and available to talk to me throughout my time at school and after. But anyway, so I applied, I got in, and I did it. So it was a 5-year degree at U of T. And
was it a master's degree at this time?
No, at the time when I went to U of T, a year or two later, it became a master's program.
Okay.
So you could come in with a 3-year undergrad and then do 2 years for master's. And I remember all of us were like, what? Like we were there for 5 years for a bachelor, and all of a sudden it was 3 years. And then you could get a master's. But anyway, that's why, interestingly, I'm jumping all over the place. I'm back in school doing a master's at Parsons in New York City because I always just wanted to do that between now and when I die. And I got to live to 100 because I'm a late bloomer, because I went back to architecture school at 32. And I said to my mom and dad, like, I'm going to be 37, 38 when I graduate. And my mother's greatest line was, well, you're going to be 37 or 38 anyway. So you might as well be 37 or 38 with an architecture degree. So my family's always been very supportive.
You
So
said
so
what I
much
was just
so
going
that
to
I
say.
could cry a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've
I mean,
always supported me.
For the fact that your brother would say, go make the decision after you get in, if you can get in, like go do that.
Yeah.
And what I was going to say to you before, and I said, we'll get there was, and you just touched on it now. I think that there are a lot of people that pursue careers in life, and when they achieve what they're looking to achieve, they will leave the education element alone. And what I have admiration for you about is that you have pursued education at every single stage of your life.
Yes. So that was ingrained in me as a child, and my family, we're all guilty of that. We've all gone. My brother is a dentist, went back to school and did his MBA. My niece is an architect, went back to do her master's and another master's in education. Like we all just keep going. I always say the school is easier than real life, quite honestly.
Oh, I'm the exact opposite. I'm like, when I was done, I was like, I will never go back.
Yeah, no, I think after my master's, my dream is between now and whenever I'd like to do my PhD, but I got to just get one more semester and I'm finished. What I was going to say is when I was at U of T, fourth year, it was a 5-year degree, as I mentioned. In fourth year, everybody actually at that time did go, my whole class, to study abroad, and our home base was Florence. And I really felt at that time we had this wonderful professor, Hans Luca. I can see him now, and his wife. He was from Berlin. And we would stand for 5 hours in front of a Palladian villa or whatever and draw it and discuss it. And it was just, I just ate it up. It was amazing. And he made me realize that I'd sort of found my people, because Florence in particular, that, in the days when it was built, like nobody was a specialist. Everyone was doing everything. I mean, now I always feel like in North America, more than in Europe, everyone's a specialist. Oh, I only do interiors. I only do the outside architecture. I only do landscape, and I'm very much a believer of a kind of a holistic approach to design where you have a total vision. And I think the project benefits from it. The client benefits from it. Anyway, so yeah, I just sort of felt like I'd found my voice, my people, my little world, which I feel very privileged. I think is a special little club to be a part of. And then I knew always that I wanted to practice. I wanted to have my own office, but also knew I knew nothing. But I was not a child in the world. I was 38 when I graduated. So I had contacts and connection, and I was kind of rooted in the community, but I hadn't learned my craft yet. I did work for 2 firms, different ends of the spectrum. One where I learned how to do, great working drawings and good meeting notes and how to document everything. I won't mention any of the names.
That's fine.
And then on the other end of the spectrum, I learned how to cut off your ear for your art and, to do anything you had to do to just do great work. And I knew somewhere I'd have to land in the middle because I've always been a sole practitioner. So I kind of I wear all hats. Anyway, so I did work in those firms. And then one day I got an offer to do a beach house in the Keys in Florida. That was my first project. I wasn't even licensed yet. And
what?
Yeah, it's still standing after 5 hurricanes. But anyway, I was like, I brought it to work one day, all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, like, look what I got. Like I'm going to bring it in the office. Let's do it. And they're, very much like, sorry, that's not a moneymaker. Because the firm that I was at that moment was, really that was kind of the bottom line. So I said, okay, well then I got to go. I got to quit my job. I got to do this. And I remember my boss at the time, who I'm still friends with to this day. I do adore him. I've learned a lot from him. He took me for lunch and told me I'm making the biggest mistake of my life. And I said, okay, so let me make it. And I know you love me, and God forbid if I fail, I'll come back. So I did it, and I never looked back, really. So that was the first job that I ever had, and starting my own practice. And I always knew, I remember my father-in-law at the time years ago taught me said something that was very poignant and stuck with me all these years. A smart person doesn't necessarily know everything. A smart person surrounds themselves with people who know what they don't know.
Yes.
So I've learned very much how to... I aim high, but my father's always taught me we learn from each other, and you just have to always have a trusting team that you respect, and you can go to the moon. An identity, I guess. And I've worked with Hambly and Woolley for 20 years. We just had a meeting actually this week updating the website and that. And So the name of the firm, Cindy Rendely Architecture with an X, goes back to the early days when I started my practice and I wasn't licensed yet. And the OAA would have had a problem if I called it Cindy Rendely Architecture. So Bob Hambley of Hambley and Woolley, who fancied himself a wordsmith, and he really was, he said, "You're always inspired by materials and texture. Why don't we call it Cindy Rendely Architecture?" So then when I was licensed, I kept the name because it became a talking point.
Yeah.
And a little bit of the history and background of where I come from. Although we have a family friend, when he calls the office, he says, "You guys sound like you have a speech impediment." But, instead of architecture, it's architecture. And
at the time, the OAA didn't say anything about it.
Oh, they did actually
Okay.
catch on near the end. I was just to be newly licensed.
Yeah.
And I said, "Oh, don't worry about it. Like, I'm just waiting for my stuff in the mail." Like literally my certificate or degree or whatever, my official licensing and license certificate was in the mail.
This is, and by the way, for those listening that aren't from Ontario and Canada, it's the
Ontario Association of Architects.
the governing body.
Yeah. So then I've always had, I had to write a lot about myself recently for my application to Parsons in New York City. It's really interesting to step back, look at your work, see what you've done, because you're always in it.
Yes.
And, stepping back from it. It was a really great exercise. And I did put together something that I was very happy with, proud of, I guess I would say. And I spoke of it as, related to my next point, in that I still feel very much a craftsperson at heart, a maker of things, comfortable working with my hands. And so that's really still who I am in my heart, but together with the professional side of being an architect. And it's always been there. Hence my love for teaching. So now I'm practicing architect. I'm a student. I teach. I've been teaching for 11 years, once a week, actually, in the interior design program. Again, I do all of my own landscape architecture and interiors because I very much believe in the philosophy of a holistic approach to design that I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
And I love all of it. So I do all of it. And so that's how it came to be.
So at what stage of running your practice after you started it did you establish that you're going to need some support, that you're going to need to bring in some staff? Because I know you've got a small team.
Yeah.
And I know that you're really passionate about the people that you have that work with you.
Mm-hmm.
So how did that transpire? Like, how many projects did you have to have in front of you?
Right. So in my first year of business, my father had always said to me, I was sort of afraid to jump in. After I'd done that beach house in the Keys in Florida, I did know that I still had a lot to learn. So that's when I went back to the second firm that I ever worked at. I only worked for 2.
Mm-hmm.
And I went back for 2 years, I think. Still probably not long enough. I mean, I'm still learning. I still feel like I wake up every day and still feel like I know nothing. But so in the early days, I was feeling quite vulnerable and scared about jumping in and starting a practice. So what I did is I did get a part-time job as an in-house designer for a company that manufactures all the store fixtures for mostly high-end retail, like Neiman Marcus, Holt Renfrew, Disney World, Marc Jacobs, mannequins and shoe displays and jewelry displays and glass cases and hanging racks. And so I worked with them. I knew them through family friends. And I gave them actually, I think, out of a 40-hour week, say maybe I gave them 15 hours, a little less than half my week, thinking that, oh my God, I'm going to always need this job.
Yeah.
And, they gave me a salary, and that gave me a cushion to feel comfortable, like, okay, we'll ride this out for a year or two. And within 6 months, I had to fewer hours and fewer hours and fewer hours. I was there about 1.5 to 2 years. And I stayed as long as I needed to with a family who connected with me, was doing a brand new house from scratch. And were going to hire me, but they hadn't found the lot yet. So as soon as they found the lot, I knew that I would give up my time at this place, which I love. They taught me a lot. They took me to Thailand. A lot of their stuff was made in Thailand and a number of places. But anyway, we went to the source to see. What I learned there is work with the material. Don't make materials do what they can't do. Specify materials that will do what you need it to do for that particular application. So I learned a lot of craft from them as well. And then eventually I didn't have enough hours left in the week, and I hired my first employee for that new job.
And was it daunting, like the idea of like bringing someone in and now being responsible for like handing work off?
Yeah, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I really did not know what the hell I was doing. And I look back on it now thinking, oh my God, what was I doing? But
you were trying to figure it out.
Where there's a passion. My dad, that was what I was going to say. My dad always said to me, what's the worst case scenario? That it doesn't work out and you go get a job.
Yeah.
Or you go back to like the two firms that I worked at, I know would have me again. So I wasn't scared in that way. I don't know. I was also older and I just thought, what the hell? If not now, when kind of thing. So I took the leap, and that was 21 years ago. So, and I never had a business plan. People would say, what's your business plan? And I didn't really have one. I just felt I would get up every day and kill myself to do great work, and hopefully it would get me more great work. And I have built a reputation on that when you hire my office, you get me and you get all of me. And, you know, I've never been bigger than 3 or 4 people, a three or 4 person office. And it's allowed me, you know, on one hand, perhaps that's restricted me. You know, I don't do university buildings and I don't do townhouses. But I like the control. I like small scale. I like figuring out the details. I like being in it. I like building relationships and being present. And all these years later, I probably have the key to every project I've ever done. And interestingly, become quite close with, I would say, not just almost all, maybe all of my clients. And a lot of my work is based on, you know, referral really, and families where you do the parents' house, then the children's house, then the cottage, or a family where I did their city house, then their country house, then their office they rented, then the building they owned for their business. And so, you know, I haven't had a plan, but that's been the plan and somehow it's worked. So I just keep doing what I'm doing. And I do have to work. I do have to live to 100 because as I mentioned, I am a late bloomer. But my grandmother lived to 100. My dad's 94. My mom's 90. They're still Skyping and downloading and emailing and texting and Zooming and blogging and FaceTiming. So I got some luck on my side for that, and we'll see. And if I died tomorrow, I'd do it all again the same. And, you know, if you can say that you live true to yourself in the moment, the mistakes that I made, I'd do it all again because in the moment they seemed right.
Right.
And the good stuff I'd do again too. So no regrets if it ended tomorrow.
If it imploded.
Yeah. Everyone who I love knows I love them. And yeah.
So tell me, like, the number of projects that you will look at a given time. Do you have a capacity of what you're willing to take on?
For sure.
What does that look like?
Well, in a small firm, the problem with a small firm is you either have one job too few or you have one job too many. It's very easy for that balance to be tipped, and you never really know. You can't plan that in a sense. But I think I don't know if it's luck or part of it, you know, by design or a bit of both, but it's easy to carry. I can carry 4 to 5 projects maximum, but often one's just starting while one's just ending, while one's sitting at committee of adjustment, where one's going through zoning amendment, or one's just interiors, or, you know, one's easier than the other. One's closer, the other's further. So there's always a real mix, you know, in those, like, in terms of those, like those things that factor into the beginning and middle and end of a project and the completion of a project. And it just seemed to always worked out. I think thank God. I mean, you never know. You can never say never, but I've never let anyone go ever in 21 years. And if anything, I've probably needed to hire someone, but try to push through it to get to the other side of it. Because hiring people is also, it's a full-time job. To absorb a new person in an office, I always say to any new hire, it takes 6 to 8 months just to see everything once for the first time. And it's a lot of work. And it's not, you know, I enjoy it and I think I'm good at it. I think that I'm doing something right because I keep people. My first hire stayed for 12 years. Other people stay 5, 6, 7 years. Other people leave and come back. So I'm doing something right, but it's an investment and it's because I'm invested.
Yeah.
You know, as a sole practitioner, there is no room for error, I would say, or there's no room for sort of letting yourself go or sort of not be present because, you know, if there's often, you know, if there's a partner or 2 or 3, You can all sort of juggle and share the ball with each other. But I mean, I find that's hard, and I'm tired a lot, but I don't know.
Tired a lot. I mean, maybe it's because you're running your own practice,
Yeah.
and you're focused on trying to finish off a master's degree,
teaching, and
you're teaching.
Yeah.
You know, there's a couple things happening.
I am tired a lot.
Ruminating there, yeah.
And my mom is always like, maybe you need iron, and I'm like, oh, Mom, no, it's just like tired. It's just tired.
Yeah, I mean, maybe iron's going to be one of the products that's going to be involved in one of the designs, but it's definitely not the thing you need to ingest. So 4 to 5 projects, you've got a small staff. You're involved in all of it. You've got the education side of your life, and that is what you've vehemently described as the passion for wanting to learn and continuing to learn and evolve as a person. Mm-hmm. I'm curious to know a little bit more about the side of you that does the teaching, because you also say that you wake up every day and you feel like you don't know what you're doing.
Well, that's the motivator for the masters. I always kind of feel like a fraud, but that's a whole other thing for one psychiatrist, really, isn't it? It's not for here. But I have 2 people that I'll answer the teaching question first. Teaching for me is a gift. It's a gift. I love it. I really don't have time for it as much as, or to take on the 2 courses is maximum, but it does take up a lot of my time.
I would imagine so.
But I do love it. I find it very energizing. I find it very fulfilling. I find it's really lovely to be plugged in to younger minds that help keep you current and in the moment, and
challenge your way of thinking.
Yeah, and how I speak about work, or how I speak about my own work, and or always looking for new precedents to share, which I always have. Living in New York City, oh my God, it's endless. Like every day I see something new that I think I could bring back to the school and to the students, and or that informs my own work, or just as inspiring. I just find it a privilege. I find it very rewarding. I'm not, I think, my niece, who's an educator, the one who was an architect and became an educator, she always makes fun and said I'd probably be fired if anyone was watching me, because I'm very much myself. As you are hearing me now, that's how my family knows me, my clients know me, my employees know me, my students know me. There was only one version of me. And so I'm just myself. And I think that seems to resonate with the students, because a lot of people that are more, purely just academics, I have the greatest regard and respect for them as well. And they do deserve to be called professor. I hate when my students call me professor. I say, please call me Cindy, because people who are in a PhD, that's a lot of work. And to be able to call yourself doctor or professor, I think is an earned thing. And I have them call me Cindy. But the other thing that I find very rewarding being at the school is I've also met very wonderful people that are also teaching. A dear friend who is actually from Berlin and is an industrial designer. A dear friend who is the coordinator of the department, who's an architect and an interior designer. Some people that are, purely academics and that are writing, several books under their belt and just about the history of design. So it's really interesting cross-pollinization. And I find that it's given me a greater love for interiors, because I always used to separate out architecture with a big A, was the building envelope and the structural and mechanical and the electrical and all of the sort of the meat and the guts of the building. And then the interiors was like with the small A. But I've really come to have a greater respect for the pursuit of, resolving the interiors. I've always been interested in that, and it's always been a big part of my body of work. But I have, I'll now take work that's just interiors, and I would never do that. Even 5 years ago, I would never do that. No, I'm an architect and who happens to do interiors. I'm not an interior designer per se, but in a sense, I am, because I've always done it.
Right.
So I now take on work that is maybe just the scope of work is just interiors. And I love it. It's just fun. And it's a little less stressful. And, you inherit the column. You don't have to decide where the column should be with the engineer. And, it's really, and you can, just really get buried in the details without worrying about that you're spending all that time on that. And And because that's what it's about. It's just sort of figuring out every little bit of minutia and detail and how things are coming together, which you see in the interiors.
Yeah, millimeters matter.
Yeah. So it's really kind of rounded me out beautifully. And I always tell my students, you can't talk about architecture without talking about interiors, and you can't talk about interiors without talking about architecture. Like, obviously, each informs the other.
Right.
That's why I like doing it all. You know, you always, often in residential or country houses, secondary homes, where you often have more leeway and freedom because it's usually not on a city lot with a neighbor right beside you. It's often on a larger property or a lake or a farmhouse in the country, whatever it is. There's always more freedom, but I always I want to know if there's a lap pool, you know, and if I have a slot window or a sliding door or a large picture window or an entry or an exit, like you want to know, or I want to know how many people are eating at your table. Do you need a round table for 10 or, you know, a square table for 18, like whatever. So I'd be like, oh, shoot, if only I knew that earlier, I would have moved that wall 3 feet that way. Or I would have shifted the slot window 1 foot to the left. And if I want the view of the lap pool. So I always speak of that to my students, like inside informs outside, outside informs inside. That whole blurring of the boundaries is a real thing to me. I really struggle with that. When we were talking just now, coming out here from your studio about the joint line and the grout, you know, extending from inside to outside, like, you know, someone might not get that. Or one of my builders used to joke with my alignments because I'm very crazy about alignments and axes. And he would be like, oh, Cindy, you know, that window's not aligned with that maple tree 2 blocks over. But, you know, you might not know it, but I promise you feel it. You just feel it. And I think in a resolved space, in a resolved building, you know, and I also think that but it's not about budget, because good space planning, good adjacencies, good access to natural light, good circulation, good sight lines, that shouldn't have a dollar amount attached to it.
It's not a dollar amount attached to it. Those are functions of the actual.
That should be free. That should be an obvious and a given, but sadly we know it's not.
But they look, if you're taking on a large scale project, those elements are going to become a part of the project no matter what. So how someone looks at them and how they get executed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I mean, I think my point being that there's not a cost to that, and some people do it better than others.
Yes.
Some people are better space planners. Some people are better at thinking inside to outside, building envelope. How does it inform the interiors, et cetera? How does the landscape, you know, how does the building envelope inform the landscape and the sighting and the views and the orientation and the degree of the angle and where's the sun coming from? And I mean, those are all necessary things in a successful project, but I don't think they're always necessarily present in a project. So,
and you'll feel when they aren't.
Yeah. So that's why I like kind of that, you know, in my office, we've sort of built a reputation of one-stop shopping for that reason, because I don't know how to do one well without thinking about the other. So, and if you already have, I was going to say in residential often, or whether it's a country weekend home or a city house, you often have the homeowner, you've got the builder, you've got the architect, you've got the team that goes with the architect. Like there's already enough opinions there. And I don't want to find out later that, oh, as I said, we needed that round table or the long table or oh, by the way, a lap pool's coming. And I mean, I want to know that all from the outset. So that's why I like doing it all. And I think that's what I've built my body of work on, my reputation on, is that sort of one-stop shopping approach to things. Really.
And have you done projects over these last 21 years where you've only done the architecture?
No, never.
Okay.
No, I actually have walked away from projects where they say that I can be the architect, but they have their interior designer. Yeah. Then I'll just say, well, I just think I'm not the person for you, you know. Not with any attitude or anything,
no, but
I want to be able to do the whole thing, and I'm better. I'll give you a better product if you allow me to do the whole thing, because I have a clear understanding of the big picture.
Well, also,
so I've walked away from projects.
The reality is that there are so many options available to people that if they know what they're coming to someone for, they know that they'll be able to potentially have someone that can look at just that element.
Right.
And they can go find that person.
Yeah.
But if they want to have that holistic approach that you describe, then that's what you're here for.
But I do want to add as well that I remain humble at all times. I mean, I used to, for many years, not so long ago, kind of wake up every day thinking I'm going out of business every Monday morning. You know, and I have a friend who was a role model for me. a friend of mine who was did her MBA. She was in business. She built a firm for herself and sold it to a European firm for
Good.
lots of money.
Yeah. Good.
And I would go to her for business advice, and she used to say to me in the early days, "Leave part of Cindy at home in a box on a shelf. Like, don't bring all of you to the table." So I did try that in the first year, and I kind of felt like I was in a straitjacket. And I thought, like, okay, that was a philosophy that worked for her, but it was not something that worked for me. And I spoke to her often, and I spoke to my mentor, Jerome Markson, often, who I love and adore, who sadly passed away last year. And
Sorry.
he always said, and she used to say as well, that feeling never goes away. So just get used to it. That's what it is to be entrepreneurial. And, no one has guarantees. And yeah, you have that vulnerable feeling, that vulnerability, but I've also found that that's what fuels me to get up every day to keep going. And Jerome always said to me, like, at 93, I think he said, "Yeah, that feeling never goes away. I still feel like I know nothing, just get used to it." So my friend, the one in business, was like that fear about, being out of business every Monday, and Jerome's comment about feeling like you always, you never know anything. I guess that, I don't know, keeps you humble or whatever, but who knows? God forbid if that day comes, I'll get a job
look,
or I'll teach more. Or I'll go back and do my PhD.
I think part of what makes us individuals is also at some stage coming to terms with who we are and what we're looking for. And if you can derive who you are at an earlier phase of life, to know what your ambitions are for what you want to be able to provide people with in terms of a service offering, then that's a good thing to be able to know. Like you just,
Yeah.
And that helps inform people to make a decision.
Right. Yeah.
We've talked about your education and continuing education. We've talked about practice and scale of practice. We've talked about the people. We've touched on the beautiful family that you have that has been so supportive of your endeavors over the course of your life. I want to ask you about what life looks like when you have your free time, which is, I know, sparse.
Yeah.
So
well,
what do you like to do? Do you have hobbies? Is travel in it?
Have
you thought about going back to the piano?
Well, it's funny, when I was mentioning earlier about writing, I had to write about myself for my application to Parsons. And you had to speak of, who are you? What are you? What motivates you? And I would say, I'm a craftsperson. I'm an architect. I'm a student. I'm a teacher, and I'm a traveler. So I would say, to answer that question, I've been blessed from a young age to have traveled the world, to far and wide. I think there's still many, many, many places I have not been.
What's on the list of places that you have not been?
Finland, actually. Okay. Finland and Morocco. My brother and sister-in-law just came back like 3 weeks ago, and I desperately wanted to go with them. They invited me to join them, but I couldn't because I was teaching. Yeah, I couldn't. I could miss the office a bit, but I couldn't miss teaching.
Yep.
So those are two big ones on my plate. But travel, something as a gift. Yeah, I would say, as a child, I was blessed to be able to travel from a young age, and that definitely informs who we are, how we see the world.
Yeah.
And I think it definitely informs how my body of work. And it fuels me. It's a privilege and a gift, and I hope to be able to do it forever. And I am in love with New York right now, as you had mentioned, because I am spending time there 5 months at a time.
We've texted a bunch of times while you've been there. And spoken on the phone. And it's just energizing. It really fuels me. And in my spare time, I don't have a lot of spare time, but that whole word, which I've used too many times maybe already, but blurring the boundaries between design disciplines is also something I think I apply to my own life, about blurring the boundaries about kind of work and play, because they're all kind of one for me, in the sense that, I never get tired of going to museums and going to galleries and going to movies and going to shows, and just immersing myself in the creative world in any kind of discipline is my pleasure. And it's part of my work, and it's part of my play and my downtime. I think we talked about this earlier too. I am a very social creature. I know I said this to you already. You can plop me down in any room, anywhere in the world, and I can talk to anyone, anywhere, anytime about anything. But I'm also,
I need my alone time. I'm a bit of a loner. So I love to do a lot of those things myself.
Yeah.
And I do actually travel a lot by myself. I have friends and family who would love to have me on any of their trips, but I also choose to go alone often. I went to China alone. I went to Japan alone. I went to Eastern Europe alone. Because I don't know. It's like I have my agenda and I don't want anybody to cramp my style.
I was going to say, you don't have to ask anyone, do you want to go somewhere? So the travel element, I don't get it. I don't get in my own life right now. I haven't for a while. It'll come eventually. Yeah. But one thing that I always said for myself was like, I love movies. I've always loved movies. I've studied film years when I was in school. And anyhow, I like to go to the movies by myself. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I don't have to call anyone.
Yeah.
I do it every now and again, but like to go to a movie, you get a good seat.
Yeah.
And you go and you sit down.
You can't talk to anyone ananyway.
Right?
Yeah.
So why not go have the experience by myself? It's one of those things. And similar to you, I do trail biking, and the Dawn Network here in Toronto is like some of the best in the world. And I know a lot of guys and a bunch of women that go out there and do it. And I don't always go with people. Yeah. Because there's an element that when you're finally out there and you're by yourself, and it could be in the early morning, and I've had these experiences where you're out on a trail and there's a doe and a buck in the middle of Toronto just eating the grass. Yeah. And you stop your bike and you take a video and you have that moment to yourself. Yeah. And they're rejuvenating for when you want to get back to doing the other things that matter in life. Sure. Right? Yeah.
Well, I always know, like my next trip should really be somewhere on a beach and hanging out, but I usually go to cities or in urban centers.
Because you want to walk and experience it?
Yeah, I'm not someone I don't know how to relax very well, but I think I get that from my mother.
But I was going to say maybe the relaxation can be the movement.
For sure. And I do live in a building actually. Before COVID, I went to a lot of movies. And I could kind of I live in a building where I could fall out of bed and have everything at my, down the hall or down the escalator. Yeah. So there's a movie theater, a Cineplex in my building. But since COVID, I haven't gone to a lot of movies, but I'm actually going to 2 this week.
Nice. I want to ask, out of all of these travels, this is going to be a rather random question. So if you can't answer it, that's okay. Yeah. You said you've been to China, you've been to Japan. Can you remember, and among all the other places, is there a specific spot that you can remember sitting or walking through a city, not an established restaurant, like side of the road or something, where you got food and you sat down and you remember just being immersed in what the culture was in that one spot? Absolutely. Okay, go ahead.
Well, there is this funny moment. I've been blessed to travel with my parents as well. And we were in Copenhagen once. And I just wanted my day to myself, my alone time. So I said, I'll meet up with you guys for dinner. But they wanted to have breakfast with me. They always want to do what I'm doing because they know I'll always find something interesting. But no, I said, I just want to do my thing. So I remember finding this great little kind of neighborhood breakfast place. I sat down at a little cafe table for 2 outside of this, like in this sort of pedestrian area. And just watching the world go by. I probably sat there for about an hour and a half before I started my day, reading my book, seeing where I was going to go for that day, which direction did I have to walk in. It's a lot of work when you travel alone.
Do you remember what you had?
Yeah, well, I just remember I had a coffee and some sort of croissant type thing, a Danish or whatever. It wasn't like I had a whole meal or anything. I was just happy to sit there. It was a warm day. And I just watched the world go by. But interestingly, I was unaware of the fact that my parents were in the same area and they had taken a picture of me. And when we got home, they showed me the photo that they took. So I didn't venture that far, I guess. I mean, they could have had breakfast with me, sadly, but it's like, no, we'll leave her alone. But they're going to take a photo of me to show me that they saw me. It's quite funny. But the one place I do love very much, one of my favorite cities in the world is Vienna. Because it's very navigable. There's so much history there. It's so beautiful. The architecture is so beautiful. And I remember as a student, we studied this place called, the American Bar. Adolf Loos's, I think it's the American Bar. I'm just sort of tired at the moment.
That's okay.
Anyway, a famous bar by Adolf Loos. And I poked my head in and I was looking. There were no tables. It's quite small, a lot smaller than I thought when I had studied it. And this couple kind of waved to me, beckoned me over, and I went over and they said, "Are you an architect student?" I said, "Well, I am an architect and I studied this as a student." And they said, "Here, we can make room for you." Like I said, "Am I that obvious?" And they said, "Yes." But I remember sitting there also for a couple of hours, just having a drink and absorbing it all.
Yeah.
Just the culture, the place, the people. It seemed to be kind of half full of locals and half full of tourists, but it wasn't such a touristy season. And yeah, I always have little moments like that anywhere, memories of every place I've been.
Okay. Last few questions I want to ask you.
Yeah.
And by the way, this has been so much fun.
You probably learned so much from listening to people's stories and
yeah, and
take from
and
it yourself,
admittedly,
right?
I bank so much
enriching.
of this in my head.
Yeah.
I really do. As you're talking about now, like this is a stage of my life.
Yeah.
And I take ownership of where this is in my life, and
Mm-hmm.
I do a lot of reminiscing to myself about small wins in life.
Mm-hmm.
Every
It's kind of a gift, right?
every
To get a
day,
peek
literally
into
every day.
people's lives, or people that anyway that
Yeah.
you respect or are interested in, or
Yeah.
So, doing things that interest you.
Yeah. So you talk about the play on the name Architecture and the previous academia that you had in getting certified to not be an imposter and working as a metalsmith and
Yeah.
So are there certain, what's the right word, materials that you really are fond of incorporating into your work on a regular basis? Or are there other materials that you have not yet worked with that you've been waiting for the right opportunity to work with on a specific client in a certain context?
An absolute, and I know my answer to that.
Yeah.
Firstly, I have a love of brick. So I'm always looking and seeing and finding and chasing some new brick I've never used before. So yeah, it's often materials are a starting point for my projects. And then as far as a material palette, I'm always, the one thing I like, if I step back from my own work and look at my own website, what I do like about it is that every project doesn't look like the one before it or the one after it. And how can it be if you're really truly responding to the site, the client, the budget, the needs, the timing, the material palette? How can they all kind of look alike? But I do find, if ever I am, which I don't often, but if I'm browsing or glancing at anybody's website from anywhere in the world, often they can be a variation on a theme. And it's like, and I kind of like to I don't want to be that. I want to be, but there's also a thread of continuity and sameness in my work, but that's more about, I think, proportions and geometries and asymmetries and that, but not the materials. So the fact that every project, I hope to have a different material palette in each project, it makes each project very distinctly different from the one before and the one after.
Yep.
But what I do try to present to any client, I'm very interested in using natural materials. And I would say 7% of my work is that. I do like, I'll love any wood. I'll love any stone. I'll love any metal. Stones, woods, metals, and glass.
The way that your eyes lit up when you said metal comparatively to stone.
Yeah.
And
Well, it interests me. It's kind of a comfort zone, I guess. And I like playing with textures. I like monochromatic things. I don't like a lot of color. I like one's life and world to fill up the space with color. The stuff.
Yeah.
But I think the backdrop, I like there to be a thread, a continuity of and a theme in the materials, I think is what I'm trying to say, that are very compatible. And I don't like a lot of materials. I like in a 7,000 square foot house, I really demand and request that a client use one wood and one stone. So, I've been very lucky. I think that I've been able to do, I have clients that are respectful and listen and get it. And I don't like when you're in your sort of sight lines and your kind of field of view that you're seeing, like 3 different stones to the left and 1 to the right and different woods and different, I don't know. I just like a minimal material palette. it's, obviously it's rigid and I'm not for everybody. But that's just my take on things. That's my approach.
That's why this episode isn't about everybody else.
Yeah, right. But it also takes it back to the idea about, the good space planning, the good adjacencies, the good circulation, the good sight lines, the good access to natural light. Whether that's done and things are finished in gold plate or gold leaf or plastic laminate, it still should work proportionally and planning wise. I mean, I think that's where the materials shouldn't really impact that. And then if you're lucky enough to be able to use either special materials or, precious materials, I'm not afraid to say that I do enjoy using precious materials. And I have on my website that, anyone enjoys the craft of building and the making of beautiful things. I do aspire to try to create beautiful things. And I don't feel guilty for that, which sometimes I sort of think, what am I really adding to the world, And then I'll speak to clients and I've made their life happy. So I think, okay, I've done something.
That's really, that's the intent when you're working in largely in res, right?
Yeah.
So Cindy, thank you. I'm so glad that we got to do this. I really am. It's been a joy hearing about the experiences of your life and how you have, I think, personally flourished as an individual. And like, who the hell am I? But ultimately,
I know, we both said we feel like we've known each other forever, even though we really don't.
Right. It's nice. I appreciate you. I know that you were, and we talked about it. And some people are a little bit anxious about doing it, but ultimately, I will tell you, I think you settled into that chair perfectly.
Well, we'll see what it sounds like. Apologize to anyone who's listening. I don't know. I haven't done this often, so.
And you have nothing to apologize about. It's been fantastic, and thank you again so much for taking the time to do it.
Thank you for having me.